Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are proudly located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. With respect and appreciation, we honor generations of traditions and teachings around the world, and the world in which we live in today. We also recognize and learn from the contributions of the African Nova Scotian community who have shared these lands for over 400 years. My name is Myra Freeman, and I have the honor of serving as chair of the board of directors of the Discovery Center. On behalf of our President and Chief Executive Officer, Dov Berkovicki, who very much wishes that he could be here with us this evening and who sends his warmest regards, and on behalf of our entire team at the Discovery Center, thank you for being here. For anyone not yet familiar with us, the Discovery Center is Atlantic Canada's largest science center, a registered charity on the Halifax waterfront with award-winning outreach programs that extend across Nova Scotia and beyond. Every year, we welcome thousands of children and families through hands-on exhibits and STEM programs that spark genuine wonder and excitement for learning. Inspiring the next generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers is at the very heart of everything that we do. Now, consider this. When our guest applied to become an astronaut, he was one of 5,351 Canadians who stepped forward. That number was narrowed to 79, and then to 16, and at last to only 2. Behind each of those numbers stands a story of discipline, of brilliance, and sheer determination. And our guest this evening is one of only 2 who succeeded. Before he ever left our atmosphere, he served his country as a fighter pilot and a colonel in the Royal Canadian Air Force. This past April, he carried all of Canada with him. As a mission specialist aboard Artemis II, the first crewed voyage to the moon in more than 50 years, he became the first Canadian and the first person from any nation other than the United States to travel beyond Earth's orbit and around the moon. He and his crewmates flew farther from our planet than any human in history, and they returned home safely on the 10th of April. To every young person in this room, I would offer this. The distance between a curious child in Nova Scotia and the far side of the moon is not as great as it may seem. It's measured in wonder, in hard work, and in the courage to reach. Our guest is living proof of exactly that. Tonight, he is here with us in Halifax, and for the next while, he is all yours. Please join me in offering the warmest of welcomes to Canadian Space Agency astronaut, Colonel Jeremy Hansen. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. What a great welcome. Thank you, Halifax. Thank you. That's too kind. Well, I'm glad we got through the introduction. I was saying backstage, it's my least favorite part, listening to that and then coming out here. But I'm so happy to be with you. And the one thing I would say when I was listening to some of that is when we talk about being, the first Canadian to go into deep space, but How I like to phrase that is Canada became the second country in the world to send a human into deep space. We did that as a country, and it shines a bright light on what Canadians are capable of doing when we set a big vision and we go after it with our can-do attitude together. And so it makes me immensely proud of Canada, because I know from my perspective, I did my part, but it was a small role that allowed me to go on that journey with Reed, Victor, and Christina as part of an enormous team and do something extraordinary on behalf of Canada. So when you clap for that accomplishment, you're really clapping for yourselves as Canadians. I'm really proud. It also reminds me of something else that I just kind of have to get off my chest. I was out at Maritime Launch this morning to watch a rocket launch. And this is something that I've been rooting for many, many years. It's been hard fought. And it makes me very proud, again, of the people who had the perseverance to take on that challenge, to put Canada in a position to become a launcher, to be launching into space. But I hope that Thank you, yes. But I hope that community, I hope Nova Scotians are proud of that achievement. And it's just a beginning. It's humble beginnings, but this is where it starts. And that persistence has been extraordinary from my point of view. And it is a tremendous gift for Canadians, but also for the world. Canada will be able to contribute this to the world as we use space to help us live better lives on the planet. So there's lots I'd love to share with you tonight. We'll take a lot of your questions, but maybe we'll just whet your appetite. We'll just run a little video here, a recap of the mission. So you can go ahead and roll that, please. All right, so that's how you get to the moon. All right, any questions?
Here. We will be moderating the session, so myself, my colleague Jill, and Sarah. The center here will be helping you with your questions. I do have to say that we are representing here in Halifax tonight all of Atlantic Canada. We are the only stop in Atlantic Canada for this visit, and we're very grateful that you're with us. I have a question coming in from Newfoundland. From Memorial University's Johnson Geo Centre, another science centre. We only have 2 questions from out of province tonight, and this is the first one. How did you feel as you achieved each milestone of the mission?
Yeah, the feelings as you achieve milestones in the mission, you're very guarded when you're in space and you're a long way from Mother Earth. You're very guarded to let your guard down because you know at any moment it can go the other way. And so we tried to, we definitely tried to acknowledge milestones, but we definitely tried to keep our eye on the ball, if you will, to keep thinking to the next one that was coming up ahead until the very last one when the main parachutes opened. And then that's in that video, that's actually when you see Christina and I grab hands there, because once the 3 main parachutes opened, that was the first time that we felt like, okay, we really are gonna make it.
Hi. My question is, what advice would you give to young Canadians studying aerospace engineering who want to work in human spaceflight but might not want to go all the way to the moon?
Great question. My advice is follow your passions. So we need all contributions. It's one of the beautiful things that's incorporated into the mission patch that I'm wearing here on my flight suit that was gifted to Canada for this mission by an Anishinaabe artist. And under the guidance of the elder Sabe, he suggested that we incorporate one Indigenous knowledge, just one example of Indigenous knowledge. We can't represent the vastness of Indigenous knowledge in a patch, obviously, but he thought one example might spur some curiosity, one beautiful example. And if you go online and you look up the patch on the Canadian Space Agency website, there's some beautiful descriptions from Sabe and from the artist Henry of this patch and why the animals that are on here are here. And they represent the 7 sacred laws. And I'll just read them out to you. But the buffalo is respect, the eagle is love, the bear is courage, the Sabe or the Sasquatch is honesty, the beaver is wisdom, the wolf is humility, and the turtle is truth. And these are signposts or guides in our life, things we try to live by. We don't always live up to them, but we try to live by them. I am getting to your question here eventually.
Good.
But I'll just share with you the teaching of the beaver because it answers your question. So the teacher of the beaver is that it has a very special gift. And a beaver, of course, can chew down trees. It's a pretty phenomenal gift. If you imagine walking up to a big tree, you don't ever chew it down. And so it's pretty amazing that this animal can do that. And it has the wisdom to know how to use that gift to harness the power of water, to alter its environment in a way that supports others in bringing their gifts to the world. And so my advice to you is to bring your gifts to the world. So when you find your areas of passion or things you're interested in, you will know it because you will have a sense of energy to you. You will have a feeling of wanting to dig into something or lean into it. And I would just encourage you, that is exactly where you're supposed to be, is using your gifts to contribute to the world and to lift up others to use their gifts.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. All right, I've got our second and final question from our Science Center partners out at Science East in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Question is, your training included living and working in extreme environments that simulate space, like the Aquarius laboratory on the ocean floor and a cave 4 kilometers underground. Can you give us an example of a skill that you gained from those training experiences that you relied on during the Artemis II mission?
I have had some extraordinary experiences getting ready for this mission. She's mentioning a couple in that question. I lived on the ocean floor for a week in a habitat off of Key Largo, Florida. And I see the ocean completely differently now that I lived down there for a week. It really was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. But the reason we put astronauts in these places, the other example was in a caving system. We went into a caving system and explored deeper and deeper every day for a week as a crew, as a team. And the reason we do that is to put astronauts in high pressure environments where there's real risk, where you have to be on top of your game and you have to work together to keep one another safe. So that we can practice what we call team skills, really. So managing risk, but managing it together as a group, learning to communicate under pressure. When you're in a high-risk environment, there are going to be different perspectives and opinions, guaranteed. And people are going to be on different, parts of their highs and lows as human beings, and how they're feeling and where their energy is, and how do you help each other and lift one another up. And so we use these experiences to practice that. And to be honest with each other about where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are. And so, as an example, when the Artemis II crew was assigned, we intentionally committed to one another that we would launch as friends and we would land as friends. But we knew that was more than just words, it meant work. And so very quickly, we started asking for blocks of time as a crew to be together, to work through any frictions that we could find in our relationship and start communicating. Instead of burying them and pushing them down, we would start talking about them and start trying to work them out and understand why they were happening. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with the actual situation, it has to do with baggage we have inside of us, things that we've sort of created in our own minds. And so understanding what those were for each of us, for the other ones. And the answer to the question is we are trying to teach our astronauts to start working on that skill set, so that when you do get to these high pressure environments, you have the tools to do what you saw the four of us do, and the most dangerous thing we've ever done in our lives, but to do it, manage it, and to have fun doing it together.
Okay, ready? Okay. Sam, are you ready? You're a little gun shy over here. So-
Yeah, take your time.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sam, do you want me to read for you? You want to show Jeremy your t-shirt? Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Nice smile there.
Sam's question is, what are spacesuits made of?
Oh, what are spacesuits made of? They're made of many different things, actually. So you see that orange spacesuit is a launch and entry suit. And that is made in order to be easy to wear when it's not pressurized, when you're not really using it. You wear it onto the launch pad in the rocket for launch. You wear it during landing. It's not pressurized because there's air in the capsule. And it's there in case the capsule gets a hole in it, it can keep you alive. And then it blows up like a balloon, and then it's very hard to use. But in order for it to do its job, which is to keep air pressure inside, it's not really, the important part of the spacesuit is not that orange part that you see on the outside. That's sort of the protective cloth layer. The important part is inside, and it's almost like a rubber balloon that is inside that suit, and that's what keeps the air pressure in.
Thank you.
We know that you're a fan of Star Wars and that it's your favorite movie. And
we're wondering what favorite movie
Yeah, what was my favorite movie?
which one?
yeah.
Which Star Wars movie was my favorite? You know how, you did your research. That's really good. I don't always use Star Wars as my favorite space movie, but you're right. It is probably my favorite space movie. Once I was asked to pick between Star Wars and Star Trek. I had to pick a favorite in public. And that was very difficult for me. But in the end, I chose Star Wars because I decided, the thing about Star Wars, Star Trek is about the future, a future of humanity. But Star Wars is history. It happened in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. So that's why I chose Star Wars. But my favorite one would be, for me, the original, when I was young, Star Wars, I guess. What is that? It's really Star Wars 4. That would be my favorite.
Did you see any black holes while in space?
Well, the real answer is no, but it felt like I did. When we flew, we were flying around the far side of the moon. We were observing the moon, and then because we launched on April 1st, the birthday of the Air Force, by the way, which was kind of cool. Because we launched on April 1st, we ended up seeing a solar eclipse, which meant that the sun went behind the moon during our trajectory around it. And what's different for us in that perspective of a solar eclipse is that the sun is very small compared to the moon. So when you see a solar eclipse here from Earth, the moon perfectly covers the sun. But for us, the moon like wiped out the sun. Like this, I could cover the sun with my thumb. That's how big it was from where we were, from our perspective. And so we were waiting for the sun. As it got close to the moon, it was hard to observe because it was so bright. Light was coming in the windows. We had our solar eclipse glasses on. You know, there's those cardboard ones that you get like, well, you get at the Discovery Center during an eclipse probably. And we had those and we were wearing them. And then the sun went behind the moon, and our job was to describe the corona of the sun just as that happened. So I was really busy. I was making observations. I was blown away by what I was seeing. And then suddenly I kind of just sort of like glanced back, like I just opened up my perspective a little bit to look at the moon again, which was huge in the window. But I could see the whole thing, except it was gone. Like where the moon was, it was now gone. And it was replaced by just a black hole with a white halo, luminescent halo around it, and the galaxy in the background. It was crazy. And except for, it looked like a hole in the galaxy, is what it looked like. And it was, there's a picture of it in that movie that they took from the solar array cameras, but they were picking up like light that our eyes couldn't see. I think because they were adjusted to this bright sun just before it went behind. I couldn't see any of that. I just saw this eerie, scary black hole in the galaxy. And Victor was on the radio and he said, "We just went sci-fi."
Thank you.
And you guys don't have to clap every time. It's okay. A little laugh, that's good enough. And we move on.
When did you discover your first love, or like your love for space? And when did you find that you wanted to be an astronaut?
Well, I know this story mostly from my mom. She tells me, but apparently I was about 5 years old. But what I do remember is I just had an admiration for airplanes. I can't really tell you why. I'd never been in one, but I was fascinated by airplanes. And we started getting an encyclopedia set at home, and it was by alphabetical order. So book A, book B, and in book A was a whole bunch of pictures of airplanes. So encyclopedias were these books we used to have.
I own one.
That's funny for us old people, but you really don't know. They were books, and it was before the internet, so we had to use books. And you would go into the encyclopedia, and it was just like Googling something, basically. And I was in there looking up airplanes, and then I must have happened across Armstrong, Neil Armstrong, first person to walk on the moon, and there was a picture of a human standing on the moon. And obviously, I don't remember the first time that happened, but I remember the page because I went back to that book so many times in my childhood and stared at it. And I know I changed my treehouse into a spaceship. I made these control columns out of wood and hinges I found. I got some circuit breakers for the barn, from the barn, the old ones that I use for switches. I got some cardboard and I cut out dials with a popsicle stick that I could change the altitude and stuff on. For some of my colleagues, they realized the dream very late in life. In fact, they never envisioned themselves being an astronaut. I think I was pretty lucky that I was naive to think that I could just go be a space explorer. That's a great thing as a child, to have these dreams and these visions. And what really makes a dream and a vision possible is when you share it with other people. So when you think of something in your mind, that's part one. But part two is sharing it with others, that you want to accomplish something. It doesn't have to be a career goal. It could be a 3-week goal. It could be something for next year. But anytime you want to do something, if you really want to make that happen, you're going to need allies. You're going to need help. So you're going to have to tell other people you trust and that love you. And because there's another thing that's going to happen to you with pretty much any goal you set. You're going to have a moment where you don't believe it's going to happen. that is almost a guarantee. You, as a human, will almost certainly self-sabotage yourself at some point and believe it's not possible. I have definitely done that over and over again. And because you told other people, you're going to find that they're going to help you realize that you still can, or maybe you still can, and you should still try. And that is how one accomplishes goals.
What part of astronaut training was harder than you expected?
What part of astronaut training was harder than I expected? On this flight, one of the things that was really challenging was the fact that no one had done it before. No one had flown this rocket or this capsule before. And the ground team had flown it once before with no humans on it. And there's a big difference when you're a human on a spacecraft than when they're remotely controlling it from the ground. Because if they lost communication with the capsule during Artemis 1, well, then we would just lose the spacecraft. But if we lost communication with Houston during Artemis 2, what do you think we're going to do? You think we're going to just give up? There's no way. We're humans. We're going to try, right? We're going to try and get back. And so we had to work through what would we do if we lost all of that important help that we had from the mission control team. And they're extraordinary. And they helped us fly the vehicle a lot. But if they weren't there, we had to come up with all these backup plans on how we would try to get home. And that was pretty challenging. We spent a lot of time, a lot of evenings and weekends in the sim trying to figure that stuff out. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I've got a question over here from Grace. She's wondering, what was your favorite part of the Artemis 2 mission?
Probably not what you think. My favorite part of the Artemis 2 mission, and I think it happened after. I mean, there were so many amazing things. I flew with 3 people who had spent months on the space station before. I'd never been to space before. It was my first flight, but they had been to space and seen the Earth. You know, they'd spent months observing the Earth from space and had been blown away from that experience. But when we went out to the moon, we saw these extraordinary things almost every day, multiple times a day. We would look out the window and just have our breath taken away. And it was interesting for me to watch how amazed they were by what they were seeing, having spent so much time in space before. I wasn't surprised that I was in awe, but I was surprised that they were. But upon reflection of coming back, the best part has been all of the people who connected with the mission that I just didn't expect. I thought that the space geeks like me would watch it, because I would watch it. But I didn't expect so many people to tell me, like, my grandma never watches space and she watched it. And I love that. And I love the fact that humans connected with the mission because they just enjoyed seeing 4 people who work well together do something hard and have a good time and experience joy doing that together. And that, I think, well, I know we've talked about it a lot as a crew, but that's the most touching thing for us, is the human connection back home. Because let's face it, we have a lot of things that aren't going great in the world. There's a lot of negativity in the world. There's a lot of cancel culture and tear down culture. We consume and spread a lot of negative things around the world. And yet here was this example, just one tiny example, where people were spreading joy around the world and connecting with something positive, and people were creating with it and making us laugh. And I just think that's a beautiful reminder and gives me hope for humanity's future. It's like, okay, I had an inkling, like I had a feeling that we were all positive people, but I didn't know, but now I know for sure. And so if we have a choice as humans, as the media, what we put out there, what we consume, we have a choice. And it's clear that we could choose the positive and we could just have more joy on this planet.
What went through your head when you first found out you were going to be going to space in April?
What went through my head when I first got assigned to the mission? Is that what you mean, like
Yeah.
3 years ago? Yeah, that was a long time ago. I was definitely like, I had that sort of like, yes, this is awesome. And then it starts sinking in and you're like, whoa. And I often explained it as feeling humbled by that opportunity. It's something I really wanted to do, and I definitely worked hard for it. You know, if you want, you know, the other part of accomplishing goals is you actually have to work. You can't just do it in your head and dream it. You actually have to get up off your couch and do something. So yeah, I did work hard for it. But then it was humbling from the point of view of, and this is the important part, it's what I was talking about in the beginning when I walked out here, of how many people it took to make that opportunity possible. And I'm fully bought into space exploration. Like the money we invest in it, and it's very fair to question it, but I have just seen it my entire career. It brings people together. We solve really tough problems. They have ripple effects on our society that are positive and far outweigh the time we spend. Because money invested is really just people time. And inspired people doing inspiring things is a good thing for society with their energy. And so it's very humbling for me to look and think at how many people had dedicated their lives to having the vision to put Canada in that place where we were able to contribute something significant enough to be invited to be on that mission with my 3 American colleagues. That was pretty humbling. You know, I'll expand upon that a little bit. Just think about it. I mean, we were the 3rd country to put a satellite in space. With the help of the Americans, they launched it, but we were 3rd country to build a satellite and operate it in space and use it to learn more about about the atmosphere that we could use to communicate across our country. Because, and you know, this area is, you know, famed for that actually. And then at some point, Canada had the audacity, I don't know who, but to say we would build the first space robotics, Canadarm1. That was really gutsy. That was really visionary. No one had ever done robotics in space. We weren't robotics leaders. We had no idea, obviously. And somebody convinced our government to do that. And it would have been a very public failure. Imagine the shuttle bay door opens up and there's Canadarm. We even wrote Canada on the side of it. And then it doesn't work. But it worked. And that's visionary. And there are just so many examples of that. And it took so many people with that courage to put us in that position. And that is why you get left with this sense of being humbled to be part of that, you know, that story of giants who made that possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why do you name the crater on the moon?
Why did we name the crater on the moon?
The crater.
Yeah, is that what you mean, the crater, Carroll Crater? Well, the geology team we worked with, you know, they're a really amazing bunch of people who are very interested in using the moon to learn more about our history, basically. They look at the moon as a time capsule of our solar system, and they've looked at everything we learned from the Apollo program, and really what the Apollo program did was just create a whole bunch more questions that they would really like to answer. And so we work a lot with that team. And at the end of our training, when we were getting ready to launch, the leader of that team, Kelsey, said to us, you know, it would be appropriate for you as a crew to suggest a name or names for a couple of unnamed features on the moon. It doesn't mean you get to name them, but you can suggest a name. And that's a pretty big deal. Like, you know, you're like, should we really suggest a name? But then Christina had an idea about a week later, and that she brought up to Victor and I. And she said, you know, maybe we could name it after Reed's late wife, Carol. And Victor and I thought, that is a really touching idea. Because, you know, she's a huge, huge part of our story, but wasn't there to share in it as we flew to space. And so we talked to Reed about it, and he said to me, he said, I love the idea. It's a really lovely idea, but I can't do it. You'll have to do it. And so that's what we decided to do.
Do you guys change your clothes? Why can't you guys just wear diapers?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it. I know that was funny, but you're going to have to say it again.
do you guys change your clothes? Why can't you guys just wear diapers?
Do we change our clothes? Why not just wear diapers? Well, actually, we do wear diapers. Because on launch day and entry day, you're in that spacesuit for hours and hours. And so you don't want to get your spacesuit dirty. So we do wear diapers essentially on the launch pad and on the way home. But when you're in space, you're in space for many days. So at that point, and you're floating around, so you can absolutely change your clothes, and you can even bathe. And so we have, we don't have a shower, but we have these washcloths that are sort of in a bag, special bag, and you inject water into it, a little bit of water, and then you put it in the food warmer, sort of like a microwave, and you heat it up, and then you take it out of the bag, and you've got a warm washcloth, and you just wash your body just like you would on Earth. And that's how we stay clean. And then we have a toilet, so we don't need to wear diapers in space. Plus, diapers, they would take up a lot of volume. You'd have to pack a lot of diapers. For the people that have had kids, you imagine, you can be like, well, that's a lot of diapers.
Good evening. How did you and the crew manage workload and decision making during the mission's critical phases?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Sorry. How did you and the crew manage workload and decision making during the mission's critical phases?
Okay. Workload and decision making for critical phases. Well, as far as decision making goes, there's a very clear chain of command. The commander of the vehicle is in charge, and so if there's any critical decision to be made, ultimately it's his final say. In our case, it was Reed who was the commander. But we also have I think I can say we're a high-functioning team, and so we have 4 brains on the vehicle, and so we worked really hard through our training flow and all the simulators we did to come up with an effective communication system, even when there was time pressure, to let the best ideas kind of rise to the top. And even at some points, a good leader will get out of the way when they don't have the best idea. And so Reed is a great leader, and he in some situations he would say, it sounds like you got it, do it. And so we developed that trust by working together and demonstrating, each of our capabilities. And we all had certain areas of the vehicle that we had more knowledge in than others that we were sort of specialists in. And so that's one of the ways. As far as the workload goes, you have your schedule, what you're supposed to do. There's a plan. This team on the ground puts a plan together for every day, and you execute it. But then you ask for help when you need it. You let people know if you're getting behind or you're struggling, and you offer help when you have extra bandwidth to offer help. And that's just how we got through it.
Thank you.
What was the experience like when you were blasting off?
Oh, what was blast off like? It was pretty awesome. I'd do it again. In fact, the whole thing, if I, got off that ride and it was amusement park, I'd just get right back in line and go again, because I thought it was an amazing experience. The rocket is, it's this interesting thing. So like I'm losing this guy again. You're sitting there, you're waiting. It's a very complex vehicle. There's this launch team on the ground who's checking everything. And this was, we had other launch windows that we didn't make, but this was the first time we actually tried to launch that vehicle. And, I believed we would eventually go, but I didn't really believe we would go that day on the beginning of the launch window. I thought for sure it's going to get dragged out to the end of the launch window. They're going to get to there and someone's going to be like, I'm not sure about this. Let's talk about it. And, we're going to delay and delay. And those people have guts, I'll tell you that, because it takes courage to launch a rocket that has people on it. Those people have a lot of courage. And so I was waiting, and then I just thought it would get delayed, and then all of a sudden it's like T-minus 10 and it's going, and I'm like, this might actually go. And then it got to 8 seconds, and I was getting ready, and I was expecting to hear the engines light at 6, and something started rumbling at 8, and I was like, I don't know about that. And I don't really know what that was, but then everything seemed fine, and then the solids lit, and we were going, and we were on our way. And then it's just kind of like you're kind of bumping around like a bumpy airplane flight. And but it's cool. It's pushing you back in the seat. The G's are building up. You know, and it starts slowly, but they come up, and then before you know, it's like 3 times the force of gravity pushing you into your seat, and you're like, we are really going somewhere. And then there's this bang, and the solids come off, and then you start accelerating again, and all the way to space, you're riding that with that. You get up to 3.3 G, and you can just tell, man, it's crazy. It's like being in this really powerful sports car that just keeps going and going and faster. And we go all the way up to like 28,000 kilometers an hour while we're, just to get to orbit. And then before we went to the moon, we had to get up to 39 times the speed of sound. So that's like Mach 25. We had to accelerate to Mach 39 to actually get going fast enough to go to the moon. So I liked it. Thank you.
All right, I've got a question from Mary Lee in the back. It was one of my favorite moments watching you get your gold wings. I was worried that they might get lost in your really packed Integrity capsule. Do you still have your gold wings?
I do, yeah. So we have this tradition in the astronaut corps where we have, when an astronaut finishes basic astronaut training, takes about 2 years, they're awarded a silver astronaut pin. It's got this, we've been doing this since, I don't really know when it started, but probably Apollo, somewhere like that. We're doing it a long time. And then when you actually fly in space, they present you with a gold one. And so I could tell it was really Victor, it was really important for him to do this for me. And so he made sure they were on the vehicle. He brought them up, and Christina, Reed, and Victor, they already had their gold pins because they flew to space station. So they presented me with my gold pin when we were out in space. So that was pretty special. You're right. I was also worried I might lose it. It's pretty small. And it's odd how spaceships work and like where your stuff is and what it's packed in. And a lot of it is not like super helpful for keeping track of things. So I had this the one thing I had that was like mine was they had flown up a bunch of things in something like a fanny pack that I had strapped to the cargo net. And there was a small pocket in there, and I put it in there. And when I got back to Houston, eventually the fanny pack arrived, and it was still in it.
So we are very close to time. We have one last question. If everyone can stay seated after this question.
Hello. What does it feel like when you fly high in space? Does it feel like being underwater?
Yeah, it's actually a great analog. It is very similar to, if you go underwater in a pool or in a lake or the ocean and you hold your breath and you just sit very still, you feel very similar to like you do in space. But the thing about space is you don't have to hold your breath. That's awesome. And you're just floating around and there's nothing there, and it's like so fun. And like literally I could, take a piece of food like a cookie or something, and I could like just throw it to you right now. And I might miss, but there's a good chance you could get to it and like catch it and eat it. Like it's just fun to do that stuff. A lot of fun to play with your water. Our parents always told us, I told my kids, don't play with your food, just eat it. But when you're in space, everybody plays with their food. You just can't help it. It is the most fun thing. And, I like living in microgravity. That was part of the reason I did not want to come back. I was just having such a great time up there. But imagine in here, like we turned off gravity. You think we'd be having a good time? We'd be going nuts in here. We would all be having the best time, acting like kids, and just take your bud and throw them across the room, bounce off the wall, and then at nighttime you can just relax and fall asleep, just floating there. So microgravity is like one of the coolest things. While I'm getting ready to take a selfie, I might have to take a couple because I don't know if I can get the whole thing. But while I'm getting ready to do that, just let me end where I began. Is Artemis II was a tremendous opportunity to reflect a bright light on Canada's capability, not just in space, but as a country of people who can come together and do some pretty extraordinary things. We are a small country GDP-wise, with a massive landmass, but an extraordinary heart, an extraordinary ability to come together and tackle tough problems. And united as a country, we are very and extremely powerful. on the world stage in a very positive way. And I know, the East Coast hospitality, I mean, you live this. I mean, you can feel it when you land here. And so you're just a shining example to the world. We keep ourselves a little bit small, but our contribution on the world stage is massively important as it's ever been. Maybe the most important as it's ever been in history, but very important. And so we can't keep ourselves small. We have to aim big. We have to set big goals. We need the contributions of each and every one of us, and we don't have to make it hard. All that we need to do is just get up every day as individuals and try to make the world around us a little bit better by using our energy for good. I don't think it's more complicated for that. And that is a great Canadian example for the world. Very proud to be Canadian. Great to spend some time with you. I'm going to take a picture, and then they're keeping me on a very tight leash this week right now. And then we're probably going to run out the door. But heartfelt thanks for the warm welcome. Appreciate you all.